Once you have all desired images and/or text on your workspace, you are ready to cut. This is simply done by clicking on the Send to Silhouette button located up here near the printer button. It can also be achieved by clicking on the File pull-down menu and then selecting Send to Silhouette. In the side panel, depending on your document size and the type of material you are cutting, also known as media type, you'll be provided a step-by-step guide to cutting, including how the material should be placed on the carrier sheet or cutting mat if the intended material type requires the use of the carrier sheet. Let's show these steps so you can get a visual of how they help. We will start with the carrier sheet. Place a sheet of the material on the carrier sheet. Notice that the workspace has a representation of the carrier sheet. We can use this as a map to show us how the media should be oriented. Then, using that orientation, place the sheet on the carrier sheet. Step 2 specifies to set the silhouette display to the proper loading method. In this case, load with carrier. Step 3 specifies to check your settings, which we will leave for now, but if the settings need to be adjusted, we can click on this link below, which we will cover in more detail in a moment. Step 4 tells us to load the carrier sheet on the silhouette. The question of how to orient the carrier sheet on the silhouette is done by using the large arrow, because that is the edge and direction the carrier sheet should be loaded into the silhouette, positioning the large arrow evenly between the two white wheels. The final step is to send the design to the silhouette by clicking the Cut Page link. After the cut, a message on the side panel will display that the cut was successful. Once you're finished, you can either load another media onto the carrier sheet and cut again, or just close the window. That was the step-by-step, straightforward instructions on sending your design to cut. But what if you have to change the settings? Perhaps you have different media or material that needs a heavier or lighter force in order to cut. We can do this by clicking on the Silhouette Cut Settings button, which can also be accessed from the File pull-down menu. The sidebar displays different options and settings that can be adjusted prior to cutting. The first section is a list of all the different media settings. Each of these media types are simply presets that are specifically set for different types of media and are labeled as such. For instance, if the cardstock media is chosen, notice below the settings. First is a brief description that gives us a little more detail of the media setting. Below that is both the speed setting as well as a thickness setting, which is another word for how much force the silhouette will use to cut through the cardstock. Below that are the 3 different blade tips and the sketch pen. In this case, for the cardstock setting, we are shown that we need to use the 2mm blade tip, which is the yellow tip. Thus, if we need to use this cardstock setting, we'll have to switch the blade to the yellow cap prior to cutting. Up and to the right of the speed and thickness settings are these 3 check marks. The carrier sheet option notifies the program that the silhouette's carrier sheet or cutting mat will be used. Some materials, such as adhesive-backed vinyl, have their own backing sheet. You will need to check this carrier sheet option for materials that do not have a backing sheet. The track enhancing option, when checked, will notify the silhouette to turn on the track enhancing feature when the design is sent to be cut. What the track enhancing feature does is roll the material into the silhouette and back out several times prior to cutting in order to ensure the material stays on track during the cutting process. The option should be used if you're having issues with specific material types that slip during cutting and cause a misalignment. If you find that maybe the cardstock setting is not to your liking, perhaps due to the force being too low, as in some cases where the blade is getting dull, You can adjust the slider here to increase it. But if you find that you're constantly changing the settings, Silhouette Studio allows you to create your own media type settings. If you look at the list of media types again, you will notice there are these two buttons. The one with a plus will allow us to add a media type. The button with the minus will allow us to remove a media type from our list. Let's add our own cardstock media to our list by clicking on the Add button. This will prompt us to give the new media setting a name. We'll call it My Cardstock. Next, we'll adjust all the settings that work best with that media. If you're ever unsure of your new settings, there is this Test Cut button at the lower end of the side panel. This button will cut a small pattern using the new settings. To use the Test Cut, load your media into the Silhouette and, once it's loaded, use these arrow keys in the sidebar to move the blade into position where you would like to perform a test cut, and then click on the Test Cut button. This will cut a square and a triangle test pattern. Once cut, check to see if the cut is clean by pulling out the pattern. You may also set a new speed value. Keep in mind that as we make these changes, they will be stored as part of the new media type that we created. To cut the image is a matter of clicking Send to Silhouette at the bottom of the sidebar, and then clicking Cut Page. If for some reason you notice that you need to make a quick adjustment to the cut settings, just click on the Cut Settings button, which will switch back to the Cut Settings sidebar.